Alright, so let's talk about some new lenses for Sony that are coming out this year. Now, this is gonna be mostly or fully just third-party lenses because Sony tend to announce lenses just as they're gonna, go on sale. So we don't really know what's coming out from Sony before they're actually out. So this list is gonna be just simply third-party lenses, and there's also gonna be, a chance that some of these don't come out this year. Some of these might not come out at all, and I'm sort of gonna go through the list, like what we know for sure is coming out and that you can already pre-order, all the way down to the 9th lens, which is, we think it's coming out and we think it's coming out this year, but it might not. Alright, the first lens that we know is coming out this year is the Viltrox 85mm f1.8 autofocus lens. So it's gonna be $379. It's already available for pre-order. It's gonna be around 636 grams. It has a filter diameter of 72mm, and it's basically gonna be just a cheaper third-party alternative to Sony's own FE85 f1.8 lens. Now let's look into what we know so far. We know it will have, a somewhat modern and quiet autofocusing system. So what I think is it's gonna be, perfectly fine for still photography, as in autofocus wise. You can probably use it for, great portrait. However, I would be cautious when it comes to like tracking autofocus and video autofocus, because we're yet to see very good performance from third-party lenses when it comes to that for the Sony system, with a few exceptions like the Tamron 28-75 zoom and a few Samyangs that are doing alright. So like, speaking of Samyang, let's move on to the next lens. So the next lens is the Samyang or Rokinon in these states 45mm f1.8, and that's a lens that's also been announced, and I'm pretty sure you can pre-order it already. It's gonna be a tiny 162 grams, and it will be priced at $399, and it's going to be priced at $399 at release. Now this is obviously sort of Samyang's answer to the Sony 55 1.8. It's a little bit smaller and a little bit wider, and it's a really interesting lens. Like, I want to say I'm cautiously optimistic about this lens. And the reason why I say I'm cautiously optimistic about this lens is because they've priced this at a very interesting introductory price at $399, which indicates that this isn't, like a very cheap lens. People sort of expected this to be Samyang's sort of nifty 50, but to me, this puts it in between, sort of like Sony's 50 1.8 nifty 50, which is fine. It's not really good. It doesn't really have good autofocus or edge sharpness or anything like that. And the more expensive Sony 55 1.8. So I think it finds that little sweet spot there with people who want, a step up from just the simple cheap 50, but aren't ready to spend the amount of money to get that much more expensive 55 from Sony. So it's really interesting, and 45mm also sets it apart from any other lens out for the Sony system right now. So it's a very, very interesting lens. Considering Samyang's track record when it comes to autofocusing lenses, we've seen a bit of improvement over time, I'd say. Like the first few lenses they released for the system with autofocus were a bit iffy, and they've been improved somewhat, you know, over time with firmware updates, but all the way up to their latest release, which was the FE 85mm 1.4, you know, like that seemed to perform pretty well when it comes to autofocus. So be really interesting to see what they can do with this new 45 here. As I said, I'm cautiously optimistic about this lens. Alright, so third on the list, Tamron. They've got their new 17 to 28 f2.8, their sort of wide angle zoom, and pre-orders are gonna open mid-year this year, 2019, and we don't know the price yet. Most estimate it to be probably the same price as their, you know, very popular 28 to 75, which it's priced just under $1,000, and I think it would make a lot of sense for Tamron to list their new 17 to 28 at that same price, because it would make it very competitive against Sony's, you know, equivalent, which would be the 16 to 35 GM. And we know with Tamron, when it comes to their 28 to 75, like, it has great autofocus, it performs basically like a native lens, and great just overall image quality. So I think this lens is gonna be, you know, a very popular lens when it comes to a wide angle zoom. It's probably gonna be the go-to lens for many people. Now, of course, there is the alternative of the Sony GM, which has that longer reach. You know, the Tamron is, what's it gonna be? The Tamron's gonna be 17 to 28. The Sony is 16 to 35. So not only do you gain that extra 1mm at the widest range, which 1mm does make quite a bit of difference at the wider range, but it's also got those extra 7mm at the more telly part of the range there. So obviously you get a further sort of focal range with the GM, but it is also going to be, you know, half the price of that lens. So, you know, I think it finds its place in the market. It's also going to be quite a bit smaller than the Sony. Alright, moving on to lenses that we do not know yet for sure are coming out, but that we know that we can be fairly confident that they're coming out. So I want to talk about a manufacturer called Jon Newell, which they've got quite a few lenses sort of pre-announced. They've been rumored, there have been pictures of them. And to start, we got 2 lenses for full frame and 2 lenses for APS-C. So the 2 full frame lenses are a 50mm f1.8, yes, another 50 1.8, and more interestingly a 35 f2, which is a very, very lacking lens in the Sony system right now. There isn't really any 35, you know, semi-fast lens at a smaller size and a smaller price. You know, we have a couple of 35 2.8s, the tiny, you know, Sony size, and as well as the Samyang one, and then we've got nothing autofocusing until we reach, you know, the Sony size 35 1.4, or the Sigma 35 1.4, or the Samyang, you know, 35 1.4, which they're all huge lenses at huge prices. There isn't really anything in between there that sits in that sort of same range as the Sony 55 1.8, for example. Now, I don't know if this here Jon Newell is gonna be, you know, that lens that's gonna fill that gap, because Jon Newell is a brand that sort of, you know, they're most known for copying Canon lenses. They've got a few, most notably they have a pretty much straight up copy of the already very cheap Canon Nifty 50, and they've made even even cheaper and worse version of that. So I'm not too confident about this, you know, new 35 f2 that's been rumored to come out by Jon Newell, but hey, we'll see. Now moving on to what we know is that these lenses are probably gonna be $100, something like that, maybe less. I think the Jon Newell nifty 50 copy is for Canon is like less than that. I think it's around like 60 or $80, something like that. So extremely cheap lenses. And then moving on to what they've also been rumored to release for APS-C is another 50 1.8 as well as a 35 1.8 for APS-C, which both are, you know, lenses that already exist, and I feel like those aren't interesting lenses to come out for the APS-C system, really. You know, if you want an excellent, you know, in the 30 range for APS-C, you got either, you know, Sony's own 35 1.8 or the Sigma 30 1.4, which is amazing and performs just like a native lens basically. And there are plenty of 50mm options for APS-C as well. Now, of course, these Jon Newell lenses are going to be extremely cheap, probably again around $100 or less. But let's move on to the last lens that has been rumored to come out by Jon Newell, which is a 17, what is it? Let me check my notes here. So the last lens that's been rumored to come out by Jon Newell is a 24-70 zoom. Now aperture isn't known yet, but if this is even if this is an f4 for full frame, that's gonna be a very interesting lens, because now I'm not sure if Jon Newell has any zoom lenses out already, none that I know of, so that will probably be a first for them, and I'm very interested to see how they're able to, you know, pull off autofocus on a zoom lens. And with their track record of manufacturing extremely cheap lenses as well, there isn't really any extremely cheap zooms for the Sony system, period, at least not that I know of. So it's gonna be very interesting to see what that lens can do, you know, if it comes out. As I said, we're moving closer to the end of the list here, which means these lenses are more on the rumor side of things, so they might come out, they might not. Let's see. So the final lens that's been rumored to come out this year is a unknown manufacturer making a 50mm full frame f1.0 lens. So extremely fast full frame glass that is gonna autofocus. And we do know that Sony has said officially that extremely fast autofocusing lenses is a possibility on the E-mount. And this, you know, this rumor came about from a video, you know, circulating online of an autofocusing lens with that aperture. I don't know, we don't really know who's gonna make it and if it's actually gonna be mass produced or for sale, but if this comes out, it's gonna be extremely interesting. Yeah, autofocusing ultra-fast glass for Sony E-mount. Very interesting. So that wraps up our list of lenses that are most likely gonna be at least announced and most likely launched this year of 2019 for the Sony E-mount by third-party lens manufacturers. And thank you for watching. See ya. How long is that?